One fine morning, Theodore was on his way to the edge of the harbor.
I'm taking a cargo ship in,
He called to Blandford. Theodore felt proud to be the tug in charge of a ship, all by himself. Blandford the bellboy, who lived out where the waters of the harbor met the wide open ocean, dinged his bell. "Big job," he said, "but you're the tug to do it." Theodore smiled again, but then he saw the ship heading towards him. The ship looked kind of rough and scruffy. And his cargo looked like it had been just thrown all over his deck. Still, Theodore smiled his best welcome to the big harbor smile and floated out to meet him.
Hi, I'm Theodore,
He called.
What's your name?
"Cabot," said the ship. Theodore moved closer to have a better look at Cabot. It seemed like his cargo was about to fall right off his deck.
Was there a big storm out on the ocean?
Theodore asked. "No," replied Cabot. "Why?"
Well, your cargo was kind of messy.
said Theodore, trying to be polite. "I like it that way," said Cabot. Theodore began to motor around to the back of Cabot. "What are you doing?" Cabot wanted to know.
We're supposed to check to make sure ships are safe.
"Before bringing them into the harbor," replied Theodore. Cabot really didn't look very safe to Theodore. In fact, the closer he looked, the less safe Cabot seemed. "I'm safe," said Cabot in a loud voice. "I visit harbors all over the world. Have you ever been to another harbor?"
Well, no, not yet,
answered Theodore.
but I still can't tow you into the harbor until I'm sure you're safe.
"You don't have to tow me in," interrupted Cabot, "because I'm going in by myself."
Well, Theodore couldn't believe his eyes. Cabot cruised right past him, heading towards the big harbor.
Theodore hurried after Cabot.
You better let me button my tow rope onto you now,
Tooted Theodore.
We're almost in the harbor.
"I want to go in by myself," insisted Cabot.
It's very busy today,
Explained Theodore, still trying to be polite.
and you've never been here before.
"I know how to go into harbors by myself," snorted Cabot.
But you can't dock yourself,
Continued Theodore.
It's not safe.
"Well, I'm bigger than you," interrupted Cabot, "and you can't stop me." Cabot made a sharp turn and roared right past Theodore, swiping Bedford as he went. The little bull went spinning wildly off his spot.
Sorry about that, Bedford.
Called Theodore.
Are you okay?
Been better, said Bedford, sounding pretty woozy. Theodore carefully moved Bedford back to his spot.
That ship isn't so safe,
said Bedford. "That's what I think," Theodore frowned, and set off after Cabot again. Theodore caught up with Cabot, heading past the oil refinery.
Prepare to take my tow rope,
Theodore said sternly. Just then, he heard a loud splash. It looked like a piece of cargo had fallen off Cabot's deck. Theodore had no choice but to turn back and save it. "Can't stop me," hooted Cabot. Well, Theodore was beginning to think that Cabot was right about that. And he started to think that if he didn't do something to stop him, there would be a lot more trouble than some overboard cargo and a bumped bell buoy. But he was also starting to wonder if there was anything he could possibly do about it. Theodore carefully tied the tank that had fallen off of Cabot to his side and headed after the ship again. A loud honk came from the other side of Willie's Island.
I bet I know who that is,
said Theodore, hurrying. He went that way, Bedford shouted.
That ship almost ran into us,
said Hank, who was moving Brunswick barge.
That's Cabot,
puffed Theodore.
I'm his tug in charge. Looks like he's in charge of you,
grinned Hank.
Trouble?
said Brunswick.
No,
replied Theodore. You see, Brunswick was always looking for thrills and chills. Suddenly, the harbor was full of honking and tooting. Sure enough, it was Cabot. This time he was weaving dangerously around the ferry twins.
Well, maybe a little
trouble, muttered Theodore.
Can't stop me, little tuggy,
shouted Cabot, dropping more cargo overboard. Once again, Theodore went to rescue the cargo.
This is a disaster,
he said out loud. Theodore was feeling very discouraged. He had tried asking Cabot nicely to let him take him to his dock, but the ship just wouldn't listen.
How do you think I feel?
A small voice said. Theodore looked around for the owner of the voice.
Over here,
said the voice.
Beside you.
The tank was talking to him. Now, cargo was usually very quiet and well-behaved, never spoke up.
My whole job is just to lie still and stay on my ship,
the tank continued.
And I can't even do that.
It's not your fault, Theodore said kindly. Cabot didn't put you on his deck properly.
You're certainly right about that.
I'm supposed to be the tug in charge, but, well, he won't do anything I say, added Theodore. Theodore began to collect the cargo.
He never does what any of us say,
another voice called out. Now, more of Cabot's cargo was talking to Theodore. This time it was a big wooden crate.
If you tell him to go slow,
said the crate,
he speeds up.
And if you tell him to tie you on tighter, he makes you looser,
said the tank.
Just because he's bigger than us, he thinks he can do whatever he wants,
said a container.
He's too wild,
said a small piece of cargo. My goodness, said Theodore.
He's just not safe,
concluded the tank. Theodore was silent a moment. Cabot does exactly what you tell him not to do, he said slowly. That gave Theodore an idea. A great big idea. The cargo all gathered around. I'm going to get you all back where you belong, he told the cargo. But first, I'm going to get Cabot where he belongs.
Well, we're fine right here, said the crate.
Yes, it's kind of fun floating around,
agreed the container.
Whee!
Giggled a small piece of cargo.
I'm having a bath. If there's nothing I can do about Cabot,
Theodore said to himself,
maybe
there's something he can do himself. Theodore set about to pick up all his new friends. A little later, Cabot was cruising merrily along when he heard Theodore's whistle again.
Try and catch me,
shouted Cabot.
whatever you do,
called Theodore.
Don't go to the sandy beach.
Where's this beach? said Cabot.
Through the bridge at the end of the harbor,
answered Theodore.
But you really shouldn't go there. It's not safe.
Well, sure enough, Cabot began to cruise right under the bridge.
Just watch me,
he shouted at Theodore. Cabot chugged on towards the sandy beach, honking his horn and roaring his engine. Theodore calmly headed after him.
Slow, little tuggy buggy,
cackled Cabot.
You can't stop me.
I can, and I will,
Theodore said quietly.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, said Bedford. Cabot was racing toward the beach when suddenly he heard a scraping sound down below his hull. And the next thing he knew, he wasn't moving at all.
What happened?
He cried out.
You didn't let me finish telling you why it's not safe here, replied Theodore. The water's not deep enough for ships. You're stuck on the bottom.
Theodore moved into position to tow Cabot. He had been looking forward to this all day. Pretty soon, Theodore got Cabot unstuck and towed him to his dock, backwards.
I can't see where I'm going,
Protested Cabot. He felt very silly being tugged backwards through the harbor with everyone watching.
I think it's safer this way,
Smiled Theodore.
So do we,
Called his cargo.
we all do.